Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Ocean Expert Exchange. Scientists in every Florida school and Anjari Foundation are excited to have you join our live webinar. Events on ocean science and technology experts abound. In this monthly series, we dive into marine science and explore what's happening in the field, interesting careers, and more. And today we'll be speaking with Jennifer Norcross of the Shark Research and Conservation Program at the University of Miami, the Marine Mega Foundation, and Field School. But before we get going, we want to tell you just quickly a bit about our programs. Scientist in Every Florida School is a free program housed within the Thompson Earth Systems Institute at the University of Florida. And we have a mission at SEFS to engage K-12 teachers and students in the cutting edge research and science happening across the state by providing role models and experiences like today that we hope will inspire future stewards of our planet. Anjari Foundation is a nonprofit headquartered in West Palm Beach, Florida, and the foundation supports and promotes marine science research and education, and many of the foundation's primary initiatives involve its 65-foot research vessel, the RV Anjari. In case you missed it, any of the information in today's preview slides will be asking and reminding you to submit your questions for scientists by typing them in the chat box, and we'll get to those shortly. So at this time, I would very much like to introduce you to Jennifer Norcross. Jenny, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now so you can take it over from here. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone's having a good day. I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Uh, Everyone see my screen?
We sure do.
Yep, looking good. Thank you for the lovely introduction. Uh, Again, my name is Jennifer Norcross. You guys can call me Jenny. I just finished up my master's at the University of Miami's Rosenstiel School, and I got my master's of science in the shark research lab there, and I did my master's in collaboration with the Marine Megafauna Foundation, and I did it on the movement and habitat use of the Atlantic guitarfish using acoustic telemetry. I know that sounds like a whole lot of words, but we're going to break it down and we're going to go through it together. But first, let's start with what the heck is an Atlantic guitarfish? It's a small-bodied ray. Looks like a shark, is a ray. Oop, did you guys get that? Sorry, something just closed on mine. Whoops. Apologies. One sec. Sorry. Can you hear me? All good? Small-bodied ray, focus of my research. They're cousins to our sharks, but technically classified as a ray. They're closely related to our sawfish, which I think most of you are probably aware of, but those are also classified as rays. And you can tell that by the location of their gill slits. So where they breathe out of, sharks will have it on the sides of their bodies, while rays will have it underneath their bodies. They're what we call dorsoventrally flattened, meaning bottom to top flattened, unlike some of our fish, which are flattened side to side, with two pointed dorsal fins, a speckled tan brown body, as you can see in those photos. And they have a maximum recorded length of about 78 centimeters, so they don't get much larger than about 2 feet long. They're pretty small. They have quite a large range, spanning all the way from North Carolina to the Gulf of Mexico, or whatever you want to call it, to the coastal waters of Brazil. Their habitat includes sand, exposed hard bottoms, and coastlines. So if you've ever had the opportunity to go snorkeling off of South Florida, you may have had the opportunity to swim with one of these guys. And if you haven't, then go grab your mask and snorkel because they are truly beautiful. So, like most things in the marine world these days, they have some unfortunate threats. Their main threats include bycatch, mainly from shrimp trawling, which is when big boats basically come and tear up all the fish and all the hard bottom underneath the water. Um, this can lead to illegal fishing or unreported fishing. In addition to those threats that are also listed there, coastal development, oil exploration, or habitat loss. According to the IUCN Red List, their status is currently vulnerable with global populations decreasing. So how do we begin to combat these threats? And one of the main answers is to better understand their behavior. in particular, their movement in my case. The fancy term for studying the habitat use and behaviors of animals is called movement ecology. And this not only includes marine and aquatic species, but also terrestrial animals. Before any sort of adequate conservation, protection, or management can be taken, background info, not only about their movement, but their life history, how old are they when they can have their own pups, exploitation, the use in trade, must be considered and understood in order to make adequate management. Um, the essential habitats that we consider when talking about movement may be used for hunting, feeding, mating, pupping, etc., resting. And there's many methods to obtain this sort of data or information. Some of these methods are listed. It's a little bit of a long list, but it's also not a comprehensive list. There is many ways to do it, but we don't have to go over all of those today. We're only going to be talking about acoustic telemetry, which is what I used for my project. So, acoustic telemetry. Acoustic telemetry consists of analyzing data from stationary receivers. You're going to see those black sort of rectangles you see in that image on the right. Those are the things that are gathering data. Those are called receivers. Tagged individuals, like those guitarfish with those red circles showing the signals that they're producing, when these tagged individuals are in the vicinity of these receivers, the tag and the receiver produce a detection that is then recorded on that black receiver. To collect that data, you have to go dive down into the ocean, get that receiver, bring it up, and download it via Bluetooth onto a laptop or a tablet, which will then be used for analysis. This all sounds very confusing, and it does involve a fair amount of math and data analysis, but I promise you the juice is worth the squeeze. So here are two distribution maps. So where Atlantic guitarfish are located in the world. Two distribution maps for the Atlantic guitarfish published by shark and ray experts in the field. And you may notice a gap in these distribution maps right about right there. And you can sort of see it on the one on the left as well. That's actually our study location. That is where we were actively tagging and still are actively tracking Atlantic guitarfish. So as you can see, there's a gap in the knowledge that we have about these species, and that's why studies like these are so important. So what were the questions throughout all that we're trying to answer? Are Atlantic guitarfish resident, meaning do they have a preference for an area where it decides to stay for a long time? Or are they engaged in long distance movements? Or are they also doing both of these things? Can we identify patterns in this movement? Are there certain types of times of day that they might be doing things? Also, not listed, do they exhibit, this is another fancy science word because we love them, do they exhibit site fidelity? Basically, do they leave a location for a certain amount of time and then return back? Do they display site fidelity? Do they come back to a certain location? And so site fidelity and residency really work together. So after guitarfish were tagged, receivers were installed, data was collected, cleaned, organized, all that fun math stuff. I found that one mature male guitarfish was detected over 350 kilometers south. So that blue dot there to the north, obviously that's Florida, that's South Florida, where many of us are located right now, if not all of us. You can see that one male guitarfish was detected at that northernmost point, but also that southernmost point, almost past Key West. At first glance, I was beyond excited to see such a small guy travel so far. However, upon further investigation, this travel took place over a 3-day period. And I wish that I could confidently say that this guitarfish had the power of super speed. However, based on the literature and swimming speeds, it is most likely that he was eaten by a great hammerhead shark. Still an important data point and interesting, but we do see that as a limitation when doing movement studies, that these smaller animals can be eaten by bigger animals. Still a very interesting point, but not helpful to us figuring out where the guitarfish are going. Anyways, the remaining guitarfish that were detected at receivers were found at sites fairly close, about 4 kilometers from where they were tagged to about 75 kilometers away. So this is again off of the Florida coast around the Palm Beach County, but those blue dots were all around Port St. Lucie. So four of these guitarfish, those four northernmost points, those blue points, were detected there and then never detected again. That's not to say we won't detect them. We still have a lot of downloads to do, meaning we have to go to those receivers and download them. So they could very much come back into our array, or they could have gone north and we might never see them again. But we have zero information on their movement, so any information that we do find is helpful. So if we zoom in on an area where we had a bunch of receivers closely together, we can get really good quality data and we can start to see the fine scale movements of guitarfish. So right now I'm going to play you guys a little video. It's of three guitarfish, a blue, a green, and a red. I don't know if any of you guys are from the Deerfield area, but that is Deerfield Fishing Pier on the left right there. So the blue guitarfish, actually, I'll play it for you guys. The blue guitarfish was tagged north of that pier where he's hanging out, and the green and red fishes were tagged south of that pier. And you can see that they tend to stay to their own areas. Uh, Very interesting. They did this for several months, actually. Um, Very fun. I'll let this play because it's entertaining as well. But learning all that stats, all that science, all that data management that you're probably rolling your eyes over, is worth it. It will get you to seeing cool things like this, which is awesome in the animal realm. Okay, eventually you'll see these tags start to die. We lost the blue. I think we lose the green next. Just kidding, we lose red. But anyways, the tags die eventually. Some animals, like bigger sharks, your great hammerheads, your white sharks, your tiger sharks, you can fit really, really big tags on the outside of them or on the inside of them. Bigger tags mean that you have a bigger battery, means that they can last longer. So you could have a 5 year, a 10-year tag on these animals and be gaining data that whole time. However, because these guitarfish are so little, we can only put really little tags because we don't want to hurt them. We can only put really little tags that last less than 200 days. So that is also another limitation within studying these guys, is that we can't hinder their ability to function. So our data is constrained to a smaller time period. So using that data that I just showed you, I looked at how much time guitarfish were spending moving versus resting. And if we look at those three on the right side there, green is your moving, red resting. On average, guitarfish spent about 82% of their time resting and 18% of their time moving. So for a little guy that can just sit on the bottom and breathe, he spends a lot of his time resting, meaning he's saving his energy for foraging or moving, which is very interesting, something we also did not know. Looking further into that data, using some super, super fun statistics, yes, math is actually helpful. We looked at moving and resting compared to different times of day. And this revealed that guitarfish were significantly more likely to be resting at night and dawn and more likely to be active during the day and dusk, which was also a surprising finding for me because we think of our sharks and our rays, more our sharks, they tend to hunt at dawn and dusk, but we see that these guys have been more likely to be resting at dawn. So with everything that I just said, how does that all translate to conclusions for what I did? So this study was the first investigation on any movement ecology and fine scale habitat use of Atlantic guitarfish, and we found that they were highly resident. They tended to stay in the same spot and they liked the same spot, um, but they would also leave the same spot and then come back to that same spot, which is known as site fidelity. So they were loyal to the sites that they were found at. but they were also capable of long distance movements. Although that one guy that did get eaten by a hammerhead did unfortunately get eaten by a hammerhead, some of the other ones went greater distances than 50 kilometers away before returning back. Also, we found out they were more active at dusk and during the day, which could point to foraging or feeding or potentially mating activities. We also found out that they spent the majority of their time resting, like a lot of us do on the weekends. So, how do we take those conclusions and then translate them to conservation and fisheries management? So, the high residency and site fidelity that we see suggests that they rely heavily on localized, specific habitats. So, these habitats could be used as critical foraging, mating, pupping, etc. zones, making them priority areas for protection. A good way to protect areas is creating marine reserves, which have been a proven tool for conserving resident elasmobranchs, our sharks, rays, and skates, which should be a considered as a tool for conserving the Atlantic guitarfish. Fisheries wise, creating space or time considerations, because we saw that they were more active during some time periods and less active during other times, doing time area closures or rotational individual quotas or catch shares, fancy word, could reduce the risk of localized overexploitation, which we don't really encounter in South Florida, luckily. Ultimately, the understanding of fine scale movement patterns and habitat use of guitarfish provides a vital foundation. There's a lot of work to be done, but this foundation is very helpful to work off of. And protecting these key habitats and aligning our conservation strategies with behavioral patterns is essential to ensuring the long-term sustainability of this vulnerable species. And with that, I have to say thank you to my lovely advisors, Dr. Catherine McDonald, Jess Pate, Dr. JC, Shark Research and Conservation Lab, Field School, MMF, Florida Manta Project, data sources, and all my funding wouldn't be here without them. And I also want to say thank you to all of you today for listening to me. And it wouldn't be a good presentation if I didn't include my references, listen to your teachers. And with that, I think I'll be taking any questions anyone has.
Hey Jenny, thanks so much for talking to us about your acoustic telemetry work with Guitarfish today. We're now going to start the Q&A portion of today's Ocean Expert Exchange. So if anyone tuning in has any questions, please put them in the chat box and I can ask them for you. So first question is from Adrian, who asks, are they in the stingray or shark family?
Hi, Adrian. Thanks for the question. They are in the stingray family. They are not technically a shark. Something I said, which will be a nice way to figure out if something is a shark or a ray, is the location of their gills. You'll notice if you think about, your black tip sharks or any other sharks, they're gonna have those gills on basically what you'd think is like the side of their face or the side of their body. But rays are always gonna have their gills on the underside of their body. And that is a foolproof way of figuring out whether something is a ray or a shark.
That's great to know. I actually didn't know the difference between them. So very cool. So next question is from Rebecca, who asks, a guitarfish have such an odd shape and look like a mix of rays and sharks. How have guitarfish evolved?
So I couldn't tell you specifically about their evolutionary track, but they are closely related to our giant guitarfish, which are basically just the larger cousins, our sawfish, our wedge fish, and the other small-bodied guitarfish. They basically come off of stingrays and form their own little family of these sort of hybrid shark ray. They basically look like they have the behind of a shark, but the face of a ray. But I think it's been evolutionarily advantageous because they can swim faster, while maintaining that sort of benthic on the bottom lifestyle and attacking prey, sort of in that way.
Awesome. So next question is, how many acoustic tags do you plan on deploying or need to deploy for your study?
So we have finished deploying our tags, and because I only had 15 minutes to talk to you guys today, I didn't get through all of it, but we actually put out 28 tags on Guitarfish, and we are still collecting data and should have the rest of that data by the beginning of 2026.
Cool. And then Dina asked, do the trackers have cameras? And if so, can you see what the fish see?
These specific tags do not have cameras. We actually do a little small surgery on them and place them inside the guitarfish and close it up with some sutures. They all swim off okay. But some other universities with larger animals put camera tags on the backs of animals like nurse sharks. But these guys are a little too small to do that. The camera might just be a little too heavy for these guys. But maybe in the future, we'll try to find some small enough cameras.
The technology is always evolving, so I'm sure somebody will invent that.
Absolutely.
Next question is from Cynthia, who asked, what do guitarfish eat?
So that's a great question. We actually just had an undergrad in our lab, Ryan McMullen. He just finished his senior thesis on their diet. So while we were capturing these guitarfish, we did a small workup on them as well. And he basically used muscle biopsies, so a little bit of muscle that we take from just below their dorsal fin. And he figured out that they were eating a lot more fish than we previously thought, but also crustaceans, squid, um, something like smaller things you would think that rays are eating on the bottom. But um, if you're interested in that, Ryan McMullen, if you look him up, I believe his senior thesis does come up, and you can read it. It is super interesting.
And then Jimmy asked, do you only find guitarfish in the ocean? And do they ever come through the inlets like I've seen sharks do?
So that is an awesome question, and that is a question that I have also had. So we know that our sawfish do use those brackish waters, that like saltwater, freshwater mixing area, those estuarine environments. I hypothesize that I think that they could be using them, because also other people in the other people, other sharks and rays are capable of doing this, but we don't know um, if our Atlantic guitarfish are doing this. So I think in the future, if there's another master's student, or if we're able to continue our research, tagging more individuals and putting receivers in the intracoastal waterway would be a very interesting study. So I think that they could be. We did have a couple people say that they have seen them in the intracoastal. So I'm with you. I believe Jimmy. Let's do it right now.
That's the great thing about science, right? They're always evolving questions, it never
Yep.
ends. And then Max asks, what are the predators of guitarfish?
Awesome question, Max. So, like I mentioned, definitely our great hammerheads would go after these guys. They do specialize on eating ray species, as well as our tiger sharks, our other larger bodied sharks. I'm sure our bull sharks would go after these guys. I know within the last year, someone came upon a dead blacktip shark, which kind of surprised me, but they did a necropsy on it and they found a guitarfish in its stomach. So our blacktips are definitely eating these guys as well. But that is another question that scientists are trying to answer right now.
I didn't know that about the blacktip sharks. That's cool.
Yeah.
And then Jen asks, do guitarfish have live birth or lay eggs, and how many babies can they have at once?
So they give live birth. There's only been, I think, one or two studies on their gestation and their pupping, and it seems like they give birth to less than six individuals, and they tend to be very, very small. If you think about how small these guys are, I mean, the ones we were catching range from about 45 centimeters to 65 centimeters. That's about 2 feet long. So they're their body cavities are fairly small, so their ability to hold a lot of pups and have them be a decent size to increase their chance of survival is like fairly low. But I believe around six-ish.
And do they like reproduce often, or is it like later in like their life? Do you know?
We don't know. They definitely, like most elasmobranchs, probably mature at a later age. So they're probably several years old by the time that they're able to give birth. Um, our male guitarfish, how we assess whether or not they're of reproductive age, it's actually used by like the rigidity of their claspers. If you look in that photo, you'll see the guy on the left is a male. Basically, male elasmobranchs have paired paired genitals, for lack of a better word. But basically how hard they are, you can basically assess whether or not they are of reproductive age.
Hmm. Sounds like there's still a lot to know about the life history of them in addition to their movement.
Definitely.
So Mason asks, what should you do if you catch a guitarfish when fishing?
Great question, Mason. If you catch a guitarfish, um, the main thing is getting it back into the water as quickly and as safely as you can. If you have to handle these guys with your hands, keeping your hands away from their gill area and their eyes is the best thing that you can do. But dehooking them if it's with a hook or getting them out of a cast net as quickly as possible is the best thing that you can do for them.
Great question. Great tips from you. Thanks, Jenny.
Yeah, of course.
So Michelle asks, once a guitarfish was eaten by the hammerhead, were you able to now track the hammerhead?
So the answer to that is yes. So we thought we cannot definitively know if it was a hammerhead, but I like dove into the research to figure out how fast hammerheads swam and if that made sense with how fast the guitarfish, quote unquote, swam down south. So it was most likely a hammerhead, but unfortunately, since it ate the guitarfish, we only can track that hammerhead for as long as that guitarfish is in the stomach of a hammerhead. So when the hammerhead decides to go to the bathroom, we no longer have the ability to track it. Also, it's not reliable because we're not beyond certain that it was a hammerhead. But once he sheds that tag, we no longer can track it.
But you can make a hypothesis, that's the cool
Oh,
thing.
absolutely.
And then Bodhi asks, what depth range did you place the receivers?
The receivers were all placed in about 15 to 30 feet of water. These guys have been known to go as deep as about 30 meters, but it's likely that they're able to go deeper. But with diving with universities, you have sort of depths that you're only allowed to dive to, and based on receivers, the like quality of data goes down the deeper that you get. So keeping them in more shallow areas. Uh, but that was the question we were trying to answer. In the future, like I brought up the intracoastal, I think as well, putting like more offshore receivers would be really interesting.
Okay, so yours was mostly like more coastal
Yes.
receivers. Okay. Okay. And then Tanya asked, were the guitarfish affected by the same problems as the sawfish who were circling, unable to eat or flee the toxins in the water?
So our sawfish spend a lot more time in seagrass than our guitarfish do. They did not exhibit, to my knowledge, and most researchers that I'm aware of, haven't seen any instances of guitarfish having those issues. I believe that the sawfish issue is most likely from a what was it, a dinoflagellate in the seagrass beds. So we haven't seen that issue, and hopefully we don't, knock on wood. Um, yeah.
And the next question is, could the guitarfish's non-active times also correlate to when their predators are more active?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Predator avoidance is for sure something that they could be doing. They do, as you can see in that photo, uh, have pretty awesome camouflage when it comes to hanging out in the sandy bottom or where sandy bottom meets, exposed hard bottom. Um, You're absolutely correct. That's a wonderful hypothesis.
Sounds like another thing to test too.
So many questions to answer.
And then Emma asks, Jenny, can you touch on the potential recreational or commercial overlap with fisheries in your array? If shrimp trawling is your array in the region where those trawling permits are active.
So in my study area, shrimp trawling isn't really a something we have to deal with just because we do have the reef line and trawling is pretty prohibited around that area. Although on the west coast of Florida, that's more of a question mark as there's more shrimp trawling. Um, but that's why this location proved to be such like a good study area because they were sort of this I'm not going to say untouched, but mostly untouched like not stock, but uh habitat for these guys. If we were to study them somewhere else where they're heavily commercially caught, their behaviors might not be as like true to their biology or life history.
Oh, okay. So having that location was pretty prime for your research. That's cool.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And then Adrian asks, are they found anywhere other than Florida?
The Atlantic guitarfish can be found around like the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. They can be tracked all the way down to like Central America, all the way down to Brazil. There are some instances of finding them in the greater Caribbean areas. I actually had a friend a couple weeks ago tell me that they caught one in North Carolina. So for sure, definitely up there. But they span a pretty broad area, and they're actually the only guitarfish we have in South Florida. So if you do see one, you've got like a 99% chance of being right that it's an Atlantic guitarfish.
99, not 100.
I mean, anything's possible.
Nala asks, so before placing the tags, what sorts of data, both biological data and morphometrics, do you collect?
Absolutely. So we took a fair amount of data when we did catch these guys. We did keep every single workup less than 10 minutes, but we would take its total length, its pre-caudal length, which is the length before its tail fin or its caudal fin. We took its disc width. So if you think about basically like shoulder to shoulder on this guy, that's their disc. Disc width, we took measurements of their claspers if they had them. We took a muscle biopsy, which was used for diet. We took fin clips, which will later be used to look at population dynamics, and someone will eventually do genetics to figure out how related the individuals that we're catching were. Um, we also had some people do, I believe, cloacal swabs, which was again part of a diet study. And we also did photo identification. One of my counterparts, she also did her master's in lab. Her name's Kylie Powers. She did photo ID using these little white spots you see on their bodies and face to basically figure out if we could individually identify each guitarfish, and if we could validate that, then can we figure out if we were recapturing individuals at different sites or even seeing them when we're doing snorkels without having to catch them again and put them under that stress. So there was a lot of bang for our buck if we were encountering an individual, making sure that we were getting as much data as we could without putting the animal in harm.
And also lots of potential for other research about the guitarfish too. Like you said, bang
100%.
for your buck. And then Tanya asked, how have humans impacted their habitat and life cycle?
In terms of habitat, any sort of time we have coastal development, we are, disrupting the coast, whether it's with erosion by covering up their hard bottom habitat, or whether it's pollution from that coastal development. Um, Anything humans are doing on land will somehow have a connection to the ocean. Um, so even things that we eat every single day will have an impact on these guys, whether it's like the food that they're eating or or people that do consume these guys subsistently. but that is not really something that we encounter in South Florida as much. Life history wise, I am not sure. I mean, if you think about how we overfish, that can sometimes force populations to produce like smaller individuals. So you could see animals getting smaller as time goes by.
Lots of things to think about there. But you made a good point about the connection of like anything that's happening on land is also going to happen to the ocean eventually.
Mhm.
And sort of like pivoting a little bit, several people are curious about like your journey to science. So when did you decide to study science and how did you start?
So I am originally from the North Shore of Massachusetts. I grew up in a family that lobstered like recreationally, and my brother worked on a commercial lobster boat, and we fished for striped bass and bluefish and tuna, and like just grew up on the water, loved the water, but it didn't really click for me until I got to college. I got to college and I thought I was going to do psychology and graphic design. And I got into my like first day of my environmental class and I listened to my first lecture and I was like, I'm declaring my major next week. I knew like that was what I wanted to do. And it felt like a call to like better the world that we live in. Um, so much of what people do is like extractive. I wanted to like give back to the system that we come from. So I took that class. I was like, I'm hooked on environmental science. And then it wasn't until my junior year I went abroad to study marine resource science that I got to like start diving, got my rescue diver, eventually got my dive master. And I was like, I'm sold. This is what I want to do. Began studying fish diversity. Um, and then throughout undergrad, I applied to get funding a couple of times and, excuse me, got some cool internships. And after that, I ended up working in the Florida Keys for some time. And then, like all lost 22-year-olds, I decided to apply to grad school. Um, and that led me to University of Miami, where I got the opportunity to do this. But I think if you're even curious about marine science, like dip your toes into it and try it. If it's not for you, at least you can say you tried. But I think, at least for me and most of the people I know, once you try it, there's really no going back. Uh, you might not make the most money, but you'll feel so rewarded doing what you love, and like giving back.
That's so awesome to hear. I'm so glad you found your passion in marine science, Jenny.
100%.
Were there any like classes that you thought were helpful like along the way or
Absolutely. I took a coastal oceanography course, and a lot of people hate oceanography, but I think it's really that's you might hate it too, but it's important to know like the mechanical systems behind our ocean in order to understand the biological systems. As like nerdy as that sounds, um, I hate math. I thoroughly hate math, but it is so integral and important in marine science. And oceanography is a nice way to connect it back to biology. So I definitely take an oceanography course if you can. I would also take an environmental justice course if you can, or an environmental history course. Um, Knowing our past informs our future. So I think if you can do any of those things or read an awesome book about it, more power to you. Knowledge is power.
so true? And then are you going to study like what are you going to study next for your like is it still the guitarfish or something else?
So we're finishing up this study. It looks like I'm going to continue to help out the Shark Research and Conservation Lab with their acoustic telemetry work. So continue with that. I do find fisheries management super interesting and really, really important, especially to South Florida and the Florida Keys. I think a pivot towards helping with fisheries management would be welcomed. But I also do have a background in coral, and the corals are desperately in need of some help. So I like being considered a jack of all trades to be able to help where I'm needed.
Yeah, I think like you said earlier, it's just, you have that curiosity and go where that takes you, you know?
Absolutely.
Just one more question, one final question. Besides your team, are there any other groups studying guitarfish in Florida and the Gulf?
Um, so Jessica Pate, who is my one of my PIs or principal investigators, she basically started this project, and I want to say 2021. She is gonna like continue with this forever. But there are some groups in like Mexico that I know are looking into nursery areas. I couldn't tell you their names right now, but if you look on if you even look it up, like Guitarfish in Mexico, you will find resources to these people. I also sent, I believe Amanda, a couple links to our projects, and you can see what other people um, are doing work with them. But there aren't very many people doing work with the Atlantic guitarfish, especially in South Florida. I think that's also why I was so drawn to it. A lot of people prefer the bigger, more infamous sharks, but I was excited to get to know these little weirdos because they're just as important.
Yeah, they sound really cool. Thanks for sharing all of your research with us today, Jenny.
Absolutely, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And
All right. Well, again, thank you very much, Jen, for such an informative and engaging presentation on the Atlantic guitarfish. We are excited to have you with us today. I hope everyone else had just as great of a time as I did. Thank you for joining us. We are super excited to tell you about some K-12 extension resources that you can find related to today's topic. They will be made available along with a recording of today. You can find that at the UF Earth Systems YouTube channel. And for more information about our programs, you can follow Scientists in Every Florida School and the Anjari Foundation by visiting our websites, following us on social media, and whatnot. We also want to take just a quick second to tell you about the remaining event of our fall series. We will be talking about on December 11th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be with Rick Householder, and will be talking about a mapping project of the seafloor around Florida, which sounds really interesting. You can also be on the lookout for our upcoming spring lineup. We'll have those details out shortly, but these dates are in the works. So be on the lookout. Stay tuned for those. And in the meantime, on behalf of Scientists in Every Florida School and the Anjari Foundation, we again want to thank you for joining us today.